What happens when a queen becomes too powerful, too outspoken, and no longer convenient to her king? In May of 1536, Anne Boleyn, the second wife of King Henry VIII, stood trial in the Great Hall of the Tower of London. Once crowned queen in splendour, now she faced accusations of adultery, incest, and treason. But was it justice or a deadly performance? Let's step into the courtroom and uncover the truth behind Anne Boleyn's trial. It had been just 3 years since Anne Boleyn was crowned queen. She had fought her way to the throne, displacing the beloved Queen Catherine of Aragon, changing England forever in the process. The church had split from Rome, Henry had declared himself supreme head, and Anne had promised him sons. But the sons never came. Anne gave birth to a daughter, Elizabeth, and sadly suffered multiple miscarriages. Henry's disappointment grew, and with Jane Seymour quietly rising at court, Anne's enemies moved in. Was the impending trial inevitable from the moment that she failed to bear a male heir? Anne was arrested at Greenwich and taken to the Tower. She was confused, possibly even defiant. Her crime? High treason, specifically adultery with 5 men, including her own brother George Boleyn, Lord Rochford. Anne was imprisoned in the royal apartments, ironically the same room she had stayed in before her coronation. From queenly luxury to royal prisoner in just a few short days. Her accusers included Thomas Cromwell, Henry's ruthless chief minister, and even former allies. The king remained distant and silent. Had he already signed her death warrant in his heart? The trial took place on May 15th in the Tower of London. The courtroom was grand, but the outcome was already decided. Presiding was Anne's own uncle, Thomas Howard, the Duke of Norfolk. The jury, made up of noblemen, many of whom owned their loyalty not to truth, but to the king's favour. Anne entered wearing a grey gown trimmed in fur, her hood modest. Witnesses said she looked pale but composed. And when the charges were read aloud, adultery, incest, plotting the king's death, she denied them all. She defended herself with eloquence, grace, and even flashes of wit. She said, "I do not say I have been as humble towards the king as he deserved, but I say I have always been faithful to him." Her words meant little. The evidence was flimsy. A few suggestive comments, contradictory dates, imagined trysts. No real proof, and yet the court declared her guilty. As a result, Anne was sentenced to be burned or beheaded at the king's mercy. Henry chose the sword, perhaps out of some twisted sense of mercy, or perhaps to maintain appearances. Just days later, the 5 men accused with her, including her brother, were executed. Anne herself was executed on the morning of May the 19th. She spoke calmly before the crowd, praising the king, and knelt upon the scaffold. The French executioner struck once, cleanly. Her body was placed in an old arrow chest and buried in an unmarked grave in the chapel of St. Peter in Vinicula. The next day, Henry became engaged to Jane Seymour. Historians today largely agree that Anne was innocent. The dates didn't line up. The supposed liaisons occurred when she wasn't even present, and there was no credible witness testimony. So what was really going on? Most point the finger at Thomas Cromwell. Anne had clashed with him politically, over foreign policy, over religious reform, and over power. Removing her suited his agenda. Henry, he was likely complicit. Anne was no longer useful to him. No male heir, no docility, and a new woman waiting in the wings. Cromwell provided the legal means. The king provided the will. The trial was a show. The verdict was scripted. Anne Boleyn was the victim of politics, pride, and power. Yet, Anne's legacy endured. Her daughter Elizabeth would become one of the greatest monarchs in English history. Anne's fall taught others the dangers of ambition, especially women who dared to wield influence, but she also became a symbol of grace under pressure, of injustice, of a woman who died with dignity, even as the world turned against her. Today, visitors still stand at Tower Green imagining her final steps, still peering through history's mist, asking, What if Anne Boleyn had lived? What do you think? Was Anne doomed from the start? Thank you so much for watching.